In recent times, one of the dietary options which has become more and more popular is vegetarianism. In this diet, people consume no meat or fish. A subgroup of vegetarians is vegans, who eat no animal products such as eggs or milk, and even more extreme are those who will eat no plants grown with pesticides, unnatural fertilizers, or that have been genetically modified. This diet, which is viewed as an eating lifestyle, is motivated by many factors, including ethical, health, and economic concerns. However, is a vegetarian diet desirable for human beings, or are alternative eating habits which involve consuming meat more desirable? This investigation will explore the pros and cons of a vegetarian and non-vegetarian diet, and analyze the implications of the knowledge claims made by each side of the spectrum.
Today we will be discussing one of the more controversial issues of the day. Is a vegetarian diet desirable for human beings? What do you think, Extra?
Well, I don't see a problem with an all-meat diet. Why should we have to change? What's wrong with killing a few animals?
You've raised an interesting point, Extra. Is it ethically right to kill animals for food? What do you think, giant cow sitting in the front?
Well, I just don't think it's right to kill animals. I mean, there's a lot of pain and suffering caused to those animals they kill for food. Have you ever seen how they're treated?
Yeah, they raise them in giant factory-style buildings with horrible conditions.
Here we have the slaughterhouse. This is where we turn the cows into steaks and burgers.
Hey, it could be a lot worse. All things considered, they pamper those animals compared to how they'd live in the wild. Sooner or later, a cow or pig would die in the wild, be it from disease or predators. Now then, seriously, a cow's a better life in store for it inside a commercial farm than out in the wild. In those farms, they try to keep them disease-free and at least give them an easy life, be it short. Today's cows, chickens, and stuff have been bred to the point where they give the most meat possible, but they wouldn't really survive in the wild.
Just because they aren't equipped to naturally survive in the wild doesn't make it right. Aren't there several religions that do not condone meat consumption? Hindus don't eat beef. The Jews don't eat pork. Buddhists don't eat meat. It seems to me that if all of these isolated religions have such beliefs, perhaps Christianity is the only one in the wrong.
Christianity does not state explicitly that you should or shouldn't eat animals. It merely offers a choice. If killing is morally wrong, why do we do it all the time? Besides, humanity has the capacity to think and reason, while animals do not. If we are above the animals, does that not justify our breeding them for food? Better that than causing the extinction of many species through overhunting.
Aren't you being very restrictive in saying that morals do not apply to animals?
Nope. Besides, predators exist in nature. Do you see any wolves giving up a carnivorous life out of the welfare of their prey? Humans are at the top of the food chain. They have the right to eat animals.
But the human population is at 6 billion, hardly fitting for a species at the top of the food chain. No predator can sustain itself with so many more numbers than its prey. We have to take the step and adopt a vegetarian diet.
We breed animals specifically for eating them. Humans have adapted to their large population. They know that they can no longer sustain themselves as a species with predatory behavior. So, they raise large numbers of animals specifically for consumption so that they don't screw over the food chain anymore.
That still doesn't mean that we should eat animals.
Then why do they taste so good? If humans weren't meant to eat other animals, then why is it that we find meat so delicious?
Do you know what they feed cows in those slaughterhouses? Ground up animal parts! It's unnatural cannibalism!
From time to time, cannibalism can happen in nature. Besides, since the BSE scare, the practice has considerably decreased.
That raises another point. Why do we eat animals in the first place if we can catch diseases from them? Recently, there have been many concerns over animal-contracted diseases jumping over to humans, such as BSE, avian flu, and swine flu. How do we know that these incidents aren't just being covered up? It seems to me that this makes eating meat a very risky endeavor.
You shall be destroyed, meat freezer. You are an incessant cause of disease and filth, a purveyor of BSE. You shall see that only a vegetarian diet is healthy.
Foolish Mr. Vegetar, are you aware of the inherent problem with organically grown food? Do you realize that they use fertilizer from the same animals you insult?
Impossible!
Yes, and lettuce can in that way be infected with the very BSE of which you speak. In fact, organic farmers are adverse using modern food treatment methods, thereby multiplying the risk of contracting disease from supposedly healthier food. It seems like vegetarianism isn't the disease-free alternative after all.
Stop right there.
Picker now!
There may be a risk, but is it any different than that in meat? Meats can store 14 times more pesticides than grains, vegetables, and fruits. Since they are higher up on the food chain, they will also accumulate high levels of other toxins in their environment, such as PCBs and mercury, levels which can be toxic for humans if too much meat is consumed.
Humans have been eating a balance of meat and grains for centuries and turned out fine. Why does humanity need to change its eating habits from the tried and true method?
Science has shown that meat diets are no longer necessary for humanity. If you look at the Canada Food Guide, very few servings of meat and meat products such as dairies are required. Grains and vegetables, however, require many more servings and are thus more essential. It's also very easy to find substitutes for meat and dairies.
But who helps create the recommendations that go into the food guide? Farmers! Of course they're gonna overrepresent their own produce!
Did anyone consider an alternative to why the food guide may be so? It's much easier to grow grain than to raise cattle. It takes the same amount of pasture to produce 165 pounds of beef as it does to make 20,000 pounds of potatoes. Plus, you also have to take into account the amount of oil and land it takes to run such an operation. In today's world, it makes more economic sense to grow grain instead of raising beef. In the Amazon, 1 football field of the rainforest is cut down every day to make room for cattle farms, which lose viability within a few years as the soil can't handle the overgrazing. Thus, meat consumption encourages rainforest deforestation.
Yes, but as you said, it is due to overgrazing. The same thing would happen if any piece of land was overfarmed, be it for crops or animals. Also, there are many areas where the land cannot sustain crops, as it's too high in altitude or the soil is too poor. However, animals can be raised on that same land, whereas it would not be viable to grow crops there.
Let's just say that you could feed more people by only using vegetarian diets. What difference would it make? North Americans would still hoard all the food and we'd just get fatter. North America lives a lethargic lifestyle.
So what? A meat diet is still inherently bad. In a meat diet, you take in a lot of cholesterol, protein, and fats. High protein diets put excessive pressure on the liver, which breaks down the amino acids and proteins. Eating too much protein can lead to liver failure.
Cholesterol clogs the arterial walls, causing an increase in blood pressure which could lead to a stroke or a heart attack. And a low-fat diet decreases the chance of getting diabetes.
I would have to disagree. You need to take in protein to build muscle mass. Do you know what people who don't have enough protein look like? And I'm sure that we can all agree that meat is one of the best sources of protein out there. You are also not giving fat its due. Omega-3 and 6 fatty acids, which are found in fish and meat products, are very good for the human body and essential for a healthy diet. Also, the human body still does need fat. Would it make it if it didn't need it? It's all about moderation.
Fat is still unhealthy though, and you get less of it in a vegetarian diet.
You get less of it in the meat diet nowadays as well. Due to selective breeding, most animals today are much leaner than at the turn of the century. If fat is your concern, a meat diet also takes in much less than in the past.
But too many saturated fats, found in meat, are more likely to cause the clotting of arteries, and thus heart attacks.
Too many unsaturated fats, which are found in vegetable oils, have been found more likely to cause cancer than saturated fats. It's all about moderation.
Cholesterol's also important to have. It's an important component of hormones, bile, and the nervous system. If your body will produce it anyway, what makes it so bad? Meat is important to have in the diet.
But man cannot live on meat alone. Vegetarians, on the other hand, are able to find substitutes for many nutrients contained in meat. That saves any cruelty to animals and the waste of the land.
Actually, you can live on meat alone. Take the Inuit, or as they're politically incorrectly called, Eskimos. Before the arrival of the Europeans, they were able to live off the land, in areas where there's no plant growth. How'd they do it? By eating meat and lots of fats.
By the same token, one can also survive without eating meat. Vegetarians do it all the time.
So doesn't that prove that what you eat doesn't really matter, as long as you make sure that you get the nutrients that you need? The consumption of meat happens all the time in nature. Velociraptors did it, cats do it, and humans do it. Why should we fight what evolution intended for us? Instead, humans have become responsible at managing meat resources through raising animals specifically for our consumption instead of hunting. Yes, vegetables and grains do have their benefits in a diet, but one does not need to exclusively eat vegetarian meals to survive. All that multiple dietary studies have shown is that there is no magic pill. A well-balanced diet of both vegetables and meat is best. As it has been for thousands of years, so it should still be.
A long time ago, our ancestors evolved. They went from living in the trees to living on the land as hunter-gatherers. Now, evolution must again occur for humans to survive. With our continuing multiplication and destruction of the environment, we have to adapt or we shall die. Like our ancestors did when they abandoned the trees, we must adapt to a new environment if we are to survive. If humanity continues to consume meat, we will be unable to sustain our population, and mass hunger may lead to political and economic instability. If we can create enough food to feed the world through a vegetarian diet, then we should.